A pathfinder and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He is a best-selling author and creative director, no other than Mr. Christian Hurst.
Hi, good to be here.
Welcome once again, Mr. Christian. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, thank you, Daniel. I'm Christian Hurst, and I am a creative director for about on over 15 years career in the creative industry, and now I am a best-selling author. I've been publishing my fiction stories at last after a long time of developing the stories over many years. So I'm excited to share them with the world.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Christian, through your books and best-selling books. Oh, and I hope one day you will win an award too. So today let's talk about your latest book, Lily Starling and the Storm Riders. What's the big difference of this second book of yours?
Sure. The first book is all about identity and Lily really coming into her own and that sort of first step in the coming of age process. Storm Riders is it's an evolution off of that, and it's a little bit darker. Um, People say it's darker. It's a little more uh, adult, I guess, in terms of emotions and the fact that she's an adult now and she's experiencing this new freedom of living in the galaxy and having to make her own decisions and coming to terms with the fact that we make mistakes and those consequences come back on us whether we want them to or not. So that's sort of that step in the journey.
At the start of her journey, what is Lily Starling's greatest fear, and how does becoming a storm rider force her confront it directly?
That's an excellent question, and the you'll see in the book that she's almost uh, as much afraid of having um, what she wants than she is of losing it. And I think a lot of us have that in our lives where we hold back, we fear commitment because we are afraid of loss. It's like if we let ourselves be comfortable or let love in, then it opens us up to loss. And so it's just that sort of fear of attachment. So I think that's her fear. When this starts out, it's kind of like a lot of young adults, that fear of commitment, that fear of relationships, that fear of even just being committing to that found family that she has. And um, so it's a very fragile place that we find her in, where she's sort of running from her feelings.
A fragile state. So, Mr. Christian, the title combines the gentle Lily Starling with the fierce Storm Riders. How does this contrast reflect the central conflict of your story and Lily's own internal duality?
We will find that as you read the story, you'll learn that Lily brings a perspective because in the first book we learn, of course, that she came from a different background than the other people in the book, and so she brings that different perspective, and she's sort of the audience proxy in that regard, where um, they are looking into this world. It's a little bit of a fish out of water kind of situation, whereas she brings that. Kind of no nonsense attitude where she cuts through all the BS, if you will, and um, tries and sort of cuts to the heart of matters, and that helps in a lot of situations. But then when you are a young person and you're sort of getting through life and you're getting some ups and downs and you're starting to really feel it more in control of your life until you come up against one of those things in life that you cannot control. And that's what the storm represents in this book, is that there are always things in life that we can't control. And I so some of this story came while I was thinking about the pandemic and when we were all sort of stuck in lockdown and that kind of thing. There were just so many things that made people stressed out and scared because that you had no control over it, and that's very upsetting for people. And so that's the storm is that immovable nature that you cannot uh, do. You can't will it to go away. You can't cheat it. You can't hide from it. It simply is there, and so you have to adapt to it.
Is Lily a reluctant hero, Mr. Christian, or is she eager for adventure? What is the catalyst that pushes her out of her ordinary world into this extraordinary one?
Lily is a hero because she takes action, and so the she is not a perfect hero. She's not a perfect person. Nobody's perfect, and she makes a lot of mistakes. And you'll see in this book. And I think people are surprised sometimes, or people who have read this book have expressed to me that they're surprised at some of the mistakes she makes. But they love it because she's a real flawed person. And um, I think that you will see that she is a true hero, and it's because she takes action, whether she's right or wrong. When she goes into a situation, she's going to face it, and there's no shrinking from that. And that's just the plane of it. She's not a reluctant hero. She doesn't seek out adventure, though. She's not an adventurer like, say, Indiana Jones, but she's more of a um, well, I'm here now and this is happening and I'm going to face it. She's someone who wants to control her own destiny, and she's not waiting around for other people to tell her what to do with her time.
Mr. Christian, what does it truly mean to be a storm rider? Is it a gift, a curse, or responsibility of all three?
The Storm Riders are essentially a cult in the book. So they worship the storm, and whereas the Union and the different planetary systems where the storm is affecting things they're responding to the storm with fear and with preparation and with all sorts of technology trying to mitigate the effects of it. But the storm riders, they become one with the storm. They use the power of the storm and they worship the storm, and so it's a little bit symbolic of like these forces. How do we respond to them? And is there's got to be a middle ground, right? You have these polar opposites, and usually something in the middle is the right solution.
The concept of riding a storm is incredibly evocative, Mr. Christian. Can you explain the rules and limitation of this power? What's the cause, physical or otherwise, of wielding it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so they have this special ship that can use harness the power of the storm, and essentially there's this old technology, and I won't give away too many spoilers, but
Yes.
we explore a lot of um, the ancient concepts that are sort of the background of this cult. And one of the themes that you'll see a lot in this book, and that actually will carry book into book three, which I'm writing now, um, is the concept of immortality and how whether or not we phrase it this way, I think a lot of people are seeking immortality. They're seeking to prolong their life. They wish they could live forever. They obsess with worship youth. Um, and the concept of immortality, and I've always been intrigued by pursuing this idea of death and how if you were to achieve eternal life, but wouldn't that be a sort of a death, because the death of the mortal self um, is inevitable if you are becoming immortal, because your perspective would change so greatly that even if there was, some sort of transformation and you were able to retain your consciousness, your mortal self is dead, so you're a totally different person at that point. And so we explore a little bit about that with the ancientness, the storm, and then the pursuit of eternal life. So,
How do you build a world where controlling weather is possible, Mr. Christian? What are the different factions or philosophies among those who can wield this power?
well, they wish they could control the weather. They have certain technologies that they are trying to use to protect them from the storm, but the storm riders, they harness the power of the storm, but they don't actually control it. They sort of just go where the storm goes. So it's uh, it's not exactly controlling the weather, but I suppose if you could control the weather, that would be a different, slightly different edge to the narrative there.
Mr. Christian, without giving away spoilers, what was the most challenging part of your world building? Creating a history of the storm riders, the different types of weather magic, or the geography of this tempestuous world?
I think the world building, most difficult part with the world building was connecting. I am not a big, I'm not like a Brandon Sanderson where I create these detailed like maps in my mind and things like that. I always start writing with themes and with characters. Those are my two starting points, and then sort of the locations and everything come in later. And so um, I think uh, when it comes to the world building, I think the challenge was, yeah, keeping it all straight, and where, which planet they have to be on when and how they get there, and which, well, we have to get everybody, make sure that everything makes sense and continuity. Because I'm not like a huge canon person. I don't obsess over like little details like that. Even when I watch shows and stuff, I'm a nerd, but I'm not that kind of nerd.
Mild nerd, Mr. Christian. Definitely. So is Lily Starling and the Storm Riders a metaphor for navigating internal emotional storms like anxiety or anger, or and learning to harness that energy?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is sort of the obvious one. But there is this sort of great, um, I don't know, I like to play with the concept of like good and evil and light and dark, and this idea that, because as you may know, if you've listened to me talk before or read some of my work, I am very much against the concept of absolutism. That's something that like Victor Hugo, who's one of my favorite authors, and Ursula Le Guin talked about a lot, is absolutism and how it's a danger to humanity. And so when you look at my work, a lot of times I take things like big concepts like good and evil and I subvert them, or I show the gray areas, and I try to pick apart this idea that there's like one truth, that kind of thing. And so I think the metaphor for the storm and the emotional components of it are uh, diverse. I think there's different. it has different components to it. But one of the it always goes back to Lily, and she is the protagonist, and it's her emotional journey. And so when we start the book, she's in a interesting place, and there's a story that takes place, a short story in between Voyage of the Salamander and Storm Riders that I wrote while I was writing this book. I was writing this book. I got to a chapter which was about this one character named Zen, and Zen and Lily have a relationship, and I realized that I had referenced the time they had spent together between books, and I just couldn't write this chapter without going back and writing that story. And so there's a short story that takes place between books that is the time that they spend on Adius, and they, um, they have it's a love story. It's kind of a sad story because they obviously part ways at the end of it. And so going into this story, Lily's in that headspace where she's kind of running from this relationship. Is her girlfriend is are they, it's like sort of a will they won't they thing. And then she I don't know. So I think the storm is partly that. It's like the way that we feel about people, the way that we um our identity and how it relates to other people. It's sometimes like a storm. It's hard to define. It's hard to pin down. It's hard to control sometimes, and so that's one way of looking at it.
Mr. Christian, what was the most difficult storm you had weather while writing this book? A tricky plot point, a character who would not cooperate, or challenges of the publishing world?
That's a good question. I think the part that I just talked about was the most emotionally challenging part, and I think people will feel that when they read the book. It's just picking apart this relationship. How do people who are not necessarily um, on paper right for each other work through a relationship when they fall in love, and when they decide that, because it's all about choice, right? So it's we you decide that you want to be with somebody, you decide that you need them in your life, and so how do you make that work when it's not necessarily easy? And um, so I think that for a writer, for an artist, it's hard to sometimes work through that, because if you read the parts of the book that are painful, it's painful to write that stuff, because if you want to make it real, you really have to feel it. So um, I think there it was a lot of like emotional isolation while I worked in through those parts, um, and I think the third book is even a little bit harder when it comes to some of the heavy stuff that, like, you have to put yourself in that mindset when you're writing it. So it takes some time to get in that headspace and sort of hide from everybody else, and work through it. At least my process.
Definitely. Are there any books, myths, or films that serve as a kind of weather patterns influencing the climate of your history or the story itself?
Yeah, I yeah, I'm influenced by a lot of different works and a lot of um, different artists. The It's hard to say just like off the top of my head which ones influence this. I think one of the I was very influenced uh, years and years ago by the sort of early 2000s post-apocalyptic, like dystopian genre, which was very popular at the time. Obviously I had read the Hunger Games books, which were very good, and I had seen what is my favorite film of all time, which is Children of Men. What I liked about that movie that I bring to my books is this idea of trying to make the books emotionally real, and like even though there might be things in there that are fantastical, I never want the dialogue or the emotions to feel like they couldn't be happening. And so, I think people are surprised sometimes when they read my work, and it's like they'll get through like a space battle, and then all of a sudden you've got a, like 3 pages of dialogue where but people are just having a conversation, and so it's just a little bit differently paced than some space operas.
Mr. Christian, without major spoilers, does the ending of this book set up a clear path for a sequel? Or if so, what new challenges of horizons do you see for Lily Starling?
Yes, when you finish this book, I think that you will be ready to buy the next one, or ready to read the next one. Um,
Yes.
it's it is this one more so than the last one. When it ends, I have a feeling some people, and I've been told that some people are kind of like uh, it's more of a cliffhanger. It's not necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily call it a cliffhanger, but it does tease up the next book um, quite a bit. So
Well, good luck for the next series, Mr. Christian. Looking forward for that. So, can you give us a tiny teaser about a new character, a new type of storm, or a new location we might encounter in the future book?
sure, in book three,
Yes, please.
yeah. So the book three, I did already tease the title. It's called Lily Starling and the Death Machine. Um, and I mentioned that theme of everlasting life or eternal life, resurrection. That definitely plays into the next book. Um, the next book has like the third book will have kind of Empire Strikes Back vibes. It's not going to have a happy ending, but that book four and book five, which will close out the 5 book series, will be a little more hopeful. So it's kind of just the middle part of the 5 book saga, and it's a little bit darker. But there is hope. There you will see the hope in there. Uh, but there's going to be some parts that are kind of like, oh dear, what's going to happen next? So um, let's see. What's one good little fact? Um, okay, so the prince from the first book, who was kind of a goofy character, in this book, he is the king, and his wife, you will be in the third book as a more featured character, and you're not going to be uh, exactly expecting what she's going to do because she's a little bit diabolical. So that's your teaser for the
Diabolical.
third book.
Diabolical. I like that word, Mr. Christian. So, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in third season, I'm a food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 fourth season, and love letters movie 101 review, music 101 are the same. Fourth season, Science 101, Sex 101, second season, I'm a baby podcast, Law 101, Mental Health, and Bible versus 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Christian, now that you're reading this particular creative storm from the start to finish, what is the single most important lesson you've learned about writing and storytelling that you carry into your next project?
I think that the thing I've learned the most about myself is to trust in the process a little bit, like, and not any process that anybody else tells me, just the way that I create. And, I like to sit down and write from, right through the story and without kind of going back and and changing things much. And that doesn't work for everybody, but it works for me. And so I think having confidence in myself and in the way that I do things is something that I've learned, that when I try to do things like the way that it would say to do them in a book or whatever, um, or somebody else tries to tell me how to do them, it just never goes as well. So I would just my advice to other people would be to trust your instincts.
Definitely. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Christian. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your books, your advocacy, or your upcoming books or series?
Yes, absolutely. I Please come check me out on lilystarlingbook.com, or you can find all my links on my Instagram, uh, which is at Hurst Publishing. You'll find me on TikTok as well. Follow me there because there's a lot of exciting news coming out right now. We're working on the audiobook. We're working on, the next books coming out. There's going to be new editions. We hit bestseller charts, so we're growing, and it's really exciting time. So come follow me on all the socials.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Christian Hurst because if you support him, for sure more and more best-selling books will rise. So, Mr. Christian, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.